I'm Eric Trometer. Thank you for listening to UK Cinema History. UK Cinema History, Brazil, 1986, directed by Terry Gilliam. I should have just said, look, this is just too much, cancel this for next week, but I was just so pissed off at Clubhouse, I was like, screw your god, screw you, I'm having this room. Or I should have just had Yassi run it and said, checked my ego and said, it's not like my being there is going to be that big a deal. It's not like people come to this room just to hear me spout wisdom about film or anything.
I've been arguing with you all week about last week's room, so I guess I kind of do.
Oh my God, I'm in your head, Vern. Well, get me the fuck out of your head, okay? Because it's not a good place to be. But
I've just sent a link to Yassi, but yeah, we'll see whether she finds it.
Yeah, this has for like 20 years been in my top 3 films, and I just realized I haven't watched it in a long time.
I'll tell you, rewatching it this time, just since we're just kind of having chit chat before we get started, I thought about what Leonard said about Children of Men with the long takes and the handheld cameras being distracting. With that use of the really long lens or the really short lenses, the tiny, the 9 and 11 and 14 millimeter lenses that Gilliam uses. After a while, I was kind of, I was thinking about like how Kubrick used them in Paths of Glory and The Shining and Clockwork, and and I was like, yeah. And I'm thinking of a film. I'm not thinking, I'm not thinking of what's going on in the story at that moment. So it kind of made me empathize a little bit more with Leonard's point about Children of Men. I mean, I still disagree with him, but I empathize.
May I just quickly clarify though? I think it really works well here in Brazil, and I agree with you. I thought about A Clockwork Orange and The Shining, etc. too. So there you go. But I think it really works here. I mean, and I think it's because this isn't necessarily trying to be hyper realistic, obviously. And I think Children of Men is trying to be super realistic, meaning that in Children of Men, when I'm being ripped out of the immersion, even if it's not like, but even just a bit, like blood stains on the lens. There's actually a scene here in Brazil as well where the same thing happens, and I had to think of Children of Men. But I think over here it works because it's like supposed to be kind of satirical, and it's not trying to be realistic, and I don't think it's trying to like properly immerse you. At least not in the same way that Children of Men is. It's trying to immerse you into this, crazy world,
Yeah, I am so. I have to take calming breaths. I have also been arguing with High in my head about that scene in Children of Men where Michael Caine's character gets it. I still want to make the argument for what's happening in that scene.
Should I send a link over to High maybe?
I'm talking to High right now. He had been here. He's on his way. He had been here when the 2 rooms were going at once, and X shut me down.
Yes, it was really weird. I've seen it, but like every time I rejoined your room, like a different number of people were there. So either people were joining and leaving in like very fast pace.
It was a glitch. But again, that one's on me. Now the Clubhouse garbage. That was Clubhouse. That one's on me. I didn't know what I was doing and accidentally fat thumbed 2 buttons at the same time. So there's High. Let's get High up here because we definitely want to get his voice. This is actually not a bad sized room. If this had been Clubhouse and this many people had shown up, I would have considered it a success. So there we go. But anyway, so yeah, I guess first of all, thank you, Leonard, for bailing me out of the technical jam that I was having. I appreciate it.
Don't worry.
It looks like Yassi's having internet problems, so I guess we'll kind of work around her. Hi, good to see you.
Good to
Hi
be
was
here.
one of the Hi was one of the two people who showed up for my room on Sunday on History of the Kings and Queens of England, and I jokingly said that Leonard is a 19-year-old boy who has better things to do than spend his Sunday listening to the Kings and Queens of England. And Hi pointed out that he probably had some other things he could be doing as well. And so, and I felt about an inch tall at that moment because I was like, yeah, that is true. And so, if I don't tell you people how much I appreciate it when you show up for my crazy rooms, I really do appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, and I'm sorry that I didn't come up. I actually did want to come to the Kings and Queens, but yeah, it didn't quite work.
Well, if for somehow or another Clubhouse gets their shit together by Sunday, I'll be doing a sequel room on this Sunday. Otherwise, I'm half considering leaving Clubhouse and just doing this on X Spaces, quite honestly. But
Have
I'm
you
not
have
gonna.
you
I'm.
have you tried using Club Deck maybe?
I don't own a computer, my dude.
Ah, I see. Well,
Yeah, no. I carry everything around in my pocket. Plus, I'm one of those people. I can't just kind of sit in front of a computer and do this kind of stuff. I got to be wandering around doing shit and making animal noises in the background, and it's my way.
It's
There's
such a
Yassi.
it's such a devastating bug that I imagine they'll fix it pretty quick. It's not like, oh, I can't access my replays, which I thought was a devastating bug, but they apparently didn't. But I mean, I can't use Clubhouse at all. That's something that they're going to fix very quickly. So I
Well,
think
believe it or not, this is not the first time this exact same thing has happened. We've had X Spaces episodes before because of this exact same thing happening. This is where we ended up holding If, and Yassi actually had to do a Man for All Seasons by herself without me. So,
Not by
but
myself.
anyway,
Sila helped. Sila stayed with
well,
me
that
to all my rantings about Man for All Seasons.
I did it joyfully.
anyway,
yes.
just give him a week. Give him a week. Hopefully,
Yeah, it took 2 weeks last time. I got an email from them today stating that they had fixed the problem, and they had not. So at least they're on it. I'm not going to make a decision right now because I'm pissed off, and you never should make a decision when you're angry, But I am going to reflect on what Clubhouse is actually adding to this, which is a hobby for me. This is something I enjoy, talking to people about movies, I'm gonna get off of this subject right now so we can start talking about Brazil. My apologies, rant over. Yassi, this was your choice, so why don't you start the room the way that you wanted to?
I'm gonna pass the mic to Vern because this is his favorite, #1 movie. So let him start to say what he thinks. Why is it his all-time favorite movie?
Well, it's in my top 3. It's up there with Blade Runner and for a while Chinatown. I'm not sure if it's number one now, but it's always been in my top three since I saw it. I saw it in high school. It came out my junior year, and I think it's one of the first independent films I saw in the theater. And when I watched it in high school, I was a big fan of 1984, and I was also, like I think at that point I'd read Don Quixote, and those two were like major influences on me. And when I watched this film, especially over the years, like now it's over 30 years, so, and I've seen it so many times. I've seen all and I've read them all so many times that I really can't say what my initial impression was. But over the course of my lifetime, like this film, every time I watch it, you see different little things, like in the set design, in the script, in the photography, in the costumes, um, and it always resonates. Like when I'm watching it now, like I was trying to watch it earlier in the week and I just couldn't. But like watching it now, it really resonates with the situation that's happening in Israel and even with Gaza. Some of the things that they're saying, it could have been made, except Johnathan Price is like 100 years old now, but it feels like it could have been made last year and still be, really, really topical. And like, it has like these witty touches. Like when I watch movies now, like, I don't think I've ever laughed out loud at it, but it's really, I've never laughed loud at any movie really, but it's a really funny film. But when it stops to make a serious point, like in the restaurant when the bomb goes off, or when the man catches on fire after he jackknifes the truck, and he's celebrating, and then there's that moment where the man is on fire, and then everything stops, and you're like, right. And not many films can stop on a dime like that and do it, and there's the transformations with his mother, with the cosmetic surgery makeovers. I think a lot of it just kind of anticipates almost perfectly kind of the way our world works, and at the same time it kind of subverts it, because it doesn't really have like digital technology. It's almost like steampunk technology, but it seems very forward looking, even though in this world they went with like analog instead of digital. So I think it's just brilliant. And like I've always felt very like chaotic, and I think in terms of films, like this film really captures you know the fantasy, like what it's like to live your life kind of daydreaming romantically about things, and then also to be completely oblivious about what's happening in your society. So I think all of those things, like I've been watching this for over 30 years now, and well, I guess it's over 40 years now, and it's like each of those things just resonates with me, no matter which administration you're in. Like, each presidency, I think I've watched this every 4 years or so. And each time I watch it, there are things that resonate in terms of the fantasy elements, but also it's like socioeconomics, like, because we've been living with, like the consequences of terrorism. And, the sense that, like we really never really get to look in Jill's world. But when she's in the truck, he accuses her of being a terrorist, and then she says this thing: "Have you ever met a terrorist?" And we really never get any real look into what's happening with the terrorism, but just the way that she asked that question. Obviously, she knows some quote terrorist, and I think it's genius the way it can stop on a dime and make you reflect, in this comedy. So those are some of the reasons that I think it's one of my favorite films. I'm going to give it a break for a minute.
Okay, so first of all, thank you everyone to come join us for this talk. This book is thousands of interpretation we can have, like the ending, different endings, the fight with the studios, all these going on themes with the movie. I don't know how much time do we have and how long does it take, but there's some things that I think it would be nice if we cover. That, in my personal opinion, what I found very interesting in this time, in this watch, was that I saw a very Hitchcockian woman, like at the I totally forgotten about the part that Jill becomes like a mother to Sam. So this, in this view, this is like, strangely, despite all these political things that going on in the world, that was the thing that I saw in this view. So I don't know if anyone else saw this. The absurdism, the absurdity, the satire, the individualism versus collectivism, the props, the amazing set design of the film. Of course, the music, the score, which is the title of the film, and the dream aspect, the very Jungian. Can we say that Jill is Sam? Is kind of like, yeah, that's the out, like, in the Jungian kind of dream, because when like we get there, I'm just giving you some topics. Any of these topics is interesting to anyone, we can like elaborate and talk about it. Because when he removes the samurai mask and samurai, so we can think that all the characters in the dream is him. And based on one of the endings that is available to us right now, we can say that this is the whole movie is his dream. Or we can look at it as a very Hamlet kind of way, that Hamlet, like they sent Hamlet to London and they say, oh yeah, they can't find him there because everyone's crazy there. So this is his, so they can't find him, and like society, they think that they can capture your dreams, but at the end of the day, no, they can't. Your imagination, your dreams are totally yours. And this is some other thing that I found interesting. Any of these things, that these are kind of my questions, the things that I always struggled with this film. I think it's interesting in the film, that like I also like the the ending this time again. I don't know why, like I totally forgotten about again the like the last 20 minutes of the film was so new to me this time in this view. And I don't know, this I think this the fact that the studios didn't let that put all these censorship on this film, it's kind of, the fact that the movie is kind of aligned with its history of screening, the fight that is going on in the film. It's like this movie is kind of, I told Eric earlier today that, to me, in this view, I thought that this whole movie is about censorship, is about controlling the artistic mind and the imagination, the dream. So, and I told Eric that, to me, Terry Gilliam is like Tim Burton, that a Tim Burton that like stood like to his beliefs, and he didn't change, and he didn't fall for studios, and he like he remained his true self till today. In every movie, he fought for what he believed, for his script, and he fought for his legacy. He didn't give up to what studios asked him. So that's the other thing.
Hi. Your reflections on Brazil. Hi. Your reflections on Brazil.
Hey, first of all, Purple, nice to see you here. I'm not usually on Spaces, but this is
None of
supposed to
us,
be on.
none of us are. This is a learning curve for all of us. Hi. So yeah, don't feel bad to ask questions, and don't expect us to know the answers.
No, I was just saying to Purple that I'm not usually on Spaces. I assume Purple is here because we're connected on my Twitter account. So in terms of samurai, that's Sam URI. So Sam, we're the same. So that's a clever bit of wordplay. Um, I there's all kinds of things that can be said about it artistically, and I think other folks in the room are better qualified to do that than I am. An aspect of a movie that kind of fascinates me um, as a creator is the battle that Terry Gilliam waged to get the movie released the way he wanted it released, because the I was trying to find the article, but I didn't make it in time. Maybe I'll find it later. But the head of a studio that that funded Brazil for the U.S., uh, he he thought the film was uncommercial, and he wanted it recut. Well, he wanted it reduced by a lot, and he wanted it to have a happy ending. And so I think it's I think the original movie was something like 2 hours and 30 minutes, and he wanted it cut down to something like 90 minutes. And I mean, and there is a cut um, based on his instructions and a happy ending, and it exists somewhere. I don't know where to access it,
I've
but
seen it.
Yeah, it's if you get the Criterion box set, they have all three. It might be out of print, but
Actually, it was the first version that I saw because when Universal put it on television the first time, that was and when it was on HBO the first time, that was the first version that you saw. They call it the Love Conquers All cut.
right, exactly. Um, I don't know. That's very interesting about Criterion. So it is available if you're. That's great to know. I couldn't find it streaming available, but anyway, I thought that whole thing is fascinating because it's like Brazil. On the one hand, it's like Brazil playing out in real life. On the other hand, the guy who wanted the changes is somebody who championed Spielberg and helped Spielberg get to where he is. It's not like he's an idiot, and I understand his concerns. And in fact, Brazil did not do spectacularly well financially in the U.S. So I just think. I think it's interesting that whole thing happened, and I'm not quick to villainize the studio head because I understand his concerns, um, and at the same time, I understand Terry Gilliam's position. I think they both had arguments to make. So I just think that was a really interesting situation. I imagine everybody in this room is, um, uh, just maybe entirely on Terry Gilliam's side, but I understand, I think there's two positions to take. I think there's arguments on both sides. I also think of like the Julia Roberts movie where she plays a hooker.
Pretty
Remember?
Woman.
Pretty Woman. And the studio asked for that change to be made, and the movie became a huge hit. And if they had not made that change, I think that it wouldn't have been a huge hit. And so it's like the studio. I don't think the studio was evil. I just think it was a really tricky situation, and so I'm just
Well, this
wondering.
was a different situation, though, don't you think, Hi? Because the full print had been distributing through Europe for 6 months already before Universal made this decision. So this wasn't taking a film and cutting it before release. This was taking a film that had already been released and recutting it just for the American audience.
That's true. But nonetheless, he was making a judgment that it wouldn't work for the U.S. And I mean, does anybody know what the actual box office numbers ended up being?
Well, unfortunately, because Sid Sheiman is one of those people who likes to budget the books, we'll never actually know. Universal made its money back off their $11 million deal, but they had only invested $11 million into Brazil, but they made their money back. But you also have to remember, this is the guy who's famously made all of those notes for Back to the Future, like wanting to retitle it Invaders from Mars or whatever. And Spielberg actually had to write him a memo about his notes saying, "Hey, that's hilarious. Keep it coming," because that was the only way that they could keep him from basically ruining that movie. For Gilliam's side, but
That's very interesting.
but on the other hand, because you want to you want to be fair about this, and so do I. Universal was the best place for a director to work as far as artistic freedom went of all the studios in the United States at that time. And Gilliam got a far better deal from them than they would have from anyone else, and got a lot more leeway. And if he had turned in a cut that was under 2 hours and 5 minutes, as he was contractually obligated to do, Universal would have been contractually obligated to release that film in the United States untouched. And he couldn't find his way to cutting 13 minutes out of this film. And I'm going to say a lot of good things about Brazil, but there's a good half hour of this film that could have gone on the cutting room floor and improved it. I mean, the idea that Gilliam couldn't find, I think it was 7 minutes, seven total minutes out of this film. Cut down some of those fantasy sequences, and you've got your 7 minutes. Or that there are some of the jokes that don't work. Just cut them out. Or the elevator sequence, just cut from one floor to the. I mean, there's just so many things that he could have done. So that this is where I think, and you brought up a very good point. I think both sides on this were wrong, in a way, but the idea of the director as being the ultimate auteur and having final cut on a project is all well and good, but this is the most expensive art in the world next to architecture, and if an architect said, well, I want to do the entire side of the building in practical tubing, and and the people who were having the building built said, no, you can't. I
That's
don't think we'd
different.
be sitting here having this conversation.
I don't think that's a good analogy because architecture, you're hiring somebody for something that you're living in, or that you're going to be dealing with every day for the rest of your life potentially. Um, that's not. It's not. Whereas movies for everybody. I don't think that's.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
not.
right. I like a good argument. No, and of course it's impossible not to take Terry Gilliam's side on this because he's the little guy fighting against the big corporate machine, right? You just can't, I
Gilliam
tried
did.
though. I did. I
But
tried. I did.
Gilliam did. Gilliam did cut. I mean, the version that I rented is not the one that played in Europe. It's a short. It's not a lot shorter, but it's got people who are more knowledgeable than me. How many minutes did he end up cutting for the U.S. version?
Yeah, he cut 12 minutes total from the
12
European
minutes.
version,
Yeah, so
but
12 minutes is a lot.
that was still at 2 hours and 15 minutes. It was still 10 minutes longer than the contract. Now, I'm just making arguments here. I am not taking the studio's side in this. But there is a very good reason why 2 hours and 5 minutes is the time limit in these contracts. And that is because when you go over that, you cannot run films twice in the same night at most theaters. Because the theaters in the United States at that time ran films at 7:15 and 9:15. Everybody in this room who's my age can remember that. Those were the times, 7:15 and 9:15.
Well,
You know?
Gilliam was, you could say Gilliam was a little ahead of his time in that sense
And
because it's
so
not
So
uncommon
you're
now.
cutting, yeah, you're cutting down, you're cutting in half the amount of time that people could see these films.
Well,
This was before we had the malls where they ran films from 10 o'clock in the morning on. This was
yeah, yeah. For those who saw the full version, the European version, can you tell us how what the extra minutes added, how it's different, what we what we're missing by seeing the one that's currently in circulation?
shots hold on things longer. And so I'll give you like a few examples. For instance, when they first capture Johnathan Price, there's a scene where somebody comes in and tries to negotiate with him about what he could plead guilty to based on how much he could afford, and reminds him that how his credit rating would be affected if he didn't come to some sort of arrangement in terms of the fees for his own torture. And it's things like that. The fantasy sequences go on a lot longer. Um, the the scene where he's in the truck, that you have some cutaways that make it a lot clearer that everything outside of that little block of area is kind of a wasteland, which was cut. But it's more of a pacing thing that there aren't whole scenes changed.
Thank you. That's very interesting.
Okay. Unless you had anything else, hi, I'm going to move to Sila. Sorry to
Please go
be.
ahead. But
Sorry, Yassi.
thank you very much for this.
I guess I'm instinctively trying to run this room, and then this was your
No,
choice.
please go ahead. Just one. I just want to say one thing, like about the architecture. Actually, I posted a link. It's very interesting because it focuses on the architectural aspect of Brazil, which is a very good article if you want to read. Like what makes me go look for that article was that I saw a lot of, like the city, uh especially like with like after they get out of his Sam's apartment, it looked so much like Alien, Ridley Scott's Alien, and the like kind of Geiger. I felt like that.
Also
So
produced at Universal, so probably the same sets.
oh, okay. So yeah,
Just saying.
that's I wanted to say like architecture is very important in this movie. Like we can also talk about that.
Sila, your thoughts on Brazil? You had seen it before, so this was a second viewing, if I remember correctly.
That is correct. But I would call the viewing this week as the first one because I really recall very little from my first time. And I must confess, because I think most, if perhaps all people in this room do not know that I've been watching films seriously and talking about films seriously for about a year. So the reason I'm saying that is because I've been thinking a lot about that watching this film, because I find it, for a newbie, for a baby, for a person who's not familiar with a certain language, as complexly as some of you are, this movie makes it difficult for me to even talk about it, in a sense. And as a side point, one thing I've been thinking about a couple of days ago is that with the way I was raised as a very devout, or strictly as a Christian, with a father who was a pastor, and as a result, in my situation, I had no access to films. I had no access to a lot of things, but so suddenly, the first film I ever saw in the cinema, as a film cinema, was, I think, Zelig, Woody Allen's Zelig. And it's only in the last year that I've gotten really intense with Bergman and watching films in a very different way, with more intensity and more attention. But two things I would say about this film, as a summary resulting from this, what I just told you. I found it very profound and very absurd. And profound because the determination to compose and orchestrate such a work in the way that Gilliam wanted to do it, and as you were discussing how difficult it was for him to get it to this point, I respect that very much. That an artist or a thinker or a creative person just decides to do something that way, and commercially discussions or not, I think, in my view, they are always second place. They're always secondary. What I want to do, what a person wants to do with their creation, to me, that is number one, and number two, and number three. So I just like the fact that he decided to do this. That really blew my mind. Not practically, not really, but there is so much. It is so profound in the way he's dissecting this, and at the same time so absurd, that I was thinking that just to accept it as satire and take everything else lightly, I cannot take it seriously. I just say, okay, it is satire. Whichever thoughts he has as an American British person, back and forth, it is just satire, and that's all I can. That's the only way I can accept it. In terms of the absurdity, when I think I think it was Vern who mentioned the relevance of the film every 4 years, but not to contradict what you said, but the thought came to me when something is so absurd and is criticizing systems on this level, and it proves relevant every 4 years or every year or every decade, then it is actually of little relevance. And this is why I prefer to see that as just satire and as a very serious way of dealing with something so we can take it lightly. Because when something stays relevant for year after year after year, in my view, it has no relevance.
Excellent, excellent. Yassi, do you want to go next, or you want me to do my thing first and have you kind of bring us home?
What happened to Leonard?
Hello.
Oh, my
Yeah.
apologies. This is why Yassi is in charge. I have no organizational skills.
No worries. Do you want me to go ahead?
Absolutely. This is
Okay, cool.
this is technically your room, but because of a glitch.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've only seen the film once, and that was, well, today. So I'm fairly new to it. I'm quite impressed. I, I c- I won't be able to concisely put down my thoughts, obviously. I don't think anyone can, but especially just after having seen it once, there's still like plot-wise a lot of things that I'm quite confused about. But it's definitely a film that is worth watching again. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Uh, it, I found it funny how there was a reference to the Marx Brothers towards the beginning, as this film has the same kind of chaotic and absurdist spirit as Brothers film would have. And then when I looked onto, I wasn't quite familiar with Terry Gilliam, but when I looked
Ya
onto his
aquí
director,
caminando rumbo al Zócalo.
like what he directed, he also directed 12 Monkeys, which also has a Brother reference, I believe I remember, and it's also quite an absurd film. So it seems to kind of fit into what he's made, and I believe he also co-directed Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which obviously would also fit into that. Um, yeah, uh, I I'll have to actually. So based on my first viewing, I won't be able to really say that much, but I really did one sequence that stood out to me. I find it funny that Eric, that you mentioned it earlier as one of the sequences that could have been cut, but it would have been the elevator sequence. I think that one was it really got under my skin. That was, I think, a pretty decent sequence.
Cut down.
Um,
It's a great scene. You're right.
oh yes, I agree. Like, I understood you. Yeah, you said you would have kind of shortened it. I think it was good the way it was, but I suppose I can see what you're saying. Um, yeah, I think I'll just pass it on because I won't really be able to say that much more about it. I might latch into the discussion later on.
Yazzie, did you want to be the last on this, or did you want my notes first? Because I have a
Last
lot
on
of
this,
notes.
seriously,
You know
we
what I
haven't
mean.
even started.
You know what
Anyway,
I meant. You know what I meant in terms of like the summing up. Because I have notes.
I have many questions. I still have questions. My first question is, what does "ghost in the machine" mean in the film? Like, they talk about like ghosts in the machine.
That's the code that what's his name, the friend of Lowry's father, had put in to override all of the other passwords, and he writes it in that white dust in the bathroom scene at his mother's party. And the ghost in the machine is basically something that he had put in so that people could access the Ministry of Information.
Okay, so
Next
one more
question.
thing. Okay, so the other thing, again, I want to go back to the architecture aspect. One of the things that really I found it fascinating on this view was at the end when that interrogation place, the panopticon, and where that that idea comes from. Actually, in that Man for All Season room, I kind of touched this subject, and I completely forgotten about it again. So when I see it, this uh, this kind of Pavlovian, uh, when like governments treat people like animals, and that the whole architectural aspect of that prison that comes from the philosophy of Jeremy Bentham, that from 18th century, that there is this kind of prison that the guards see all the prisoners, but the prisoners are unable to see if they're being watched or not. But this fear created inside them won't allow them to get away, to run away, even though they don't see their guards. So when I see that architecture, and in Man for All Season, actually, I talked about it because Sila and I, we were talking about that uh, Foucault and power, and the way that he looks at power, and like the hierarchy of power in society. And I said that to me, it's like that. So when I see it this time, I found it really fascinating that, um, you know, th- that government, that dystopian government, that they create this kind of fear inside people, that even though they're not sure, it's not, we don't see the big brother eye here. We have those tubes, we have those, everything, that it's kind of uh we kind of think that that docked, that yeah, it's something that connects, and kind of NSA think everyone's being watched, but it's not directly said anything about it in the film. We just assume that it exists. But I think that panopticon at the end symbolizes all that. That yes, this prison, this they they create this prison inside your head and outside your head, so it really exists. And when they're, you know that was the other thing. Oh, and to Sila's point, he's totally right. That's the point of absurdism. If we want, like it negates the whole aspect of absurdism if we want to, like, criticize it or dissect it, because that's absurdism. Like, you can't, like UNESCO, like Beckett, like, the joke's on us if we want to analyze absurdism.
That's a great point, and that is something that my notes are going to be kind of heavy on. Yassi, set your timer and make sure you interrupt me, because I'm probably going to go the whole 7 minutes here.
Before you start, I just wanted to say, I just now watched the happy ending version. It is online, and I found it by Googling. It is god awful. It is really, really horrible.
Oh yeah. The alternative takes on it, and the AVR to change the performance is just, oh yeah, oh my god, yeah. I'm sorry. I wish you had told me you were going to do that. I would have warned you against it. I'm sorry you went through that.
No, it's okay. It's not like it didn't scar me. I just
Yeah, no, it's a learning
unbelievable.
experience. It's a learning
astonishingly
experience.
bad.
Yeah. It does make you sympathize a little less with Sid Sheinberg when you're like, oh, this is what he wanted. Never mind. No wonder Gilliam was behaving like a petulant child. He didn't want this piece of shit with his name on it.
Well, I found what Gilliam said. He'd be happy to release. He said, "Listen, Sid, the film we made is a film we all agreed to make. If you want to make another film, you have my support. Just put your name on it. Sid Sheinberg's Brazil. Very simple." So that sounds like a very adult line to take. And yeah, I'd say I just um, I found it very helpful to watch the ending, uh, and uh, and God bless God bless Terry Gilliam for everything he did to fight for his version of the film.
I do still think it could have been 20 minutes shorter. Just I don't think Sid Sheinberg was the guy to do it. But
Fair enough.
hey, but if a person, and this is something that comes up a lot, I think, in Terry Gilliam's career, where I always say to myself, "Gosh, if he just had like a real strong line producer on there on his films to just say, hey, this isn't working." His films would be masterpieces. As it is, they're very, very good. And I'm going to say some negative things about Brazil, but I want to say, number one, I think it's Terry Gilliam's best film. And number two, when I'm talking about UK cinema, I point to this film as being one of the most important films to come from somebody from the UK who Terry Gilliam, technically, I mean, he is a British citizen and has lived there much more of his life than he didn't. Because it has so many ties in to the history of British cinema. For instance, McCown, the co-writer's character, is named Harvey Lime after Harry Lime in The Third Man. The joke with the desk, that's straight out of those Ealing comedies like The Man in the White Suit, and that we talked about in our Ealing room, and The Lavender Hill Mob, and The Lady Killers. I mean, this film is British as fuck when you talk about British cinema. And one of the themes that comes up time and time again in these rooms, we talked about it when we were doing the King Lear. We talked about it when we were doing Sexy Beast. We talked about it when we were doing If and This Sporting Life. Is the effect of the theater of the absurd and grotesque comedy on British cinema and on dialogue in British cinema. And this film has one of the names that we constantly kept using because we kept talking about Harold Pinter, right? And we kept talking about, of course, things like Waiting for Godot and Endgame and Samuel Beckett's Theater of the Absurd. And the other name that came up time and time again was Tom Stoppard with plays like Arcadia and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. And of course, he is one of the co-writers on this film. And I'm going to give just a quick example from the film with the excellent Ian Holm when they're talking about trying to get the check back to Buttle, and he's trying to look up who the check could go to and on the computer, and the information retrieval has him down as inoperative. And there's another one, security has him down as excised. Administration has him down as completed, and then Sam just says, he's dead. And that is perfect theater of the absurd dialogue. That because it is all about, because they all learned from Wittgenstein when Wittgenstein was teaching at Cambridge about mistrust of language. And that is a running theme throughout British, not just British comedy, but British films altogether. So when we talk about a film like Sexy Beast, and we talk about Don's dialogue in Sexy Beast, it comes back to that Pinter, Stoppard, Beckett grotesque theater of the absurd. And this film is filled with the grotesque as well. The face surgery, the coffin scene, all of these things are, yes, as Sila said, jokes, but the joke bleeds through to grotesque to a point where you are no longer just laughing at the scene, you are also kind of a little bit freaked out by it, and that is a very important part of British writing. Now, Tom Stoppard actually did the third rewrite on this film, and at that time, he was one of Hollywood's best paid ghost writers, screen doctors, screenplay rewriters. And the name of films that he did the rewrites on that don't have his name on it is legendary. Amadeus, Kramer versus Kramer, the third Indiana Jones film, which Steven Spielberg claims that Stoppard actually wrote all the dialogue for that film, but he never took credit for those films, but he took credit for this one because he, and I quote, thought some of the jokes I made were funny. And they are very funny, but it's that verbal humor that really puts this in the British vein of that particular period of British film, and it all goes back to Wittgenstein and his language games, and we have yet another film that ties into that scene. But visually, I think this film is an absolute masterpiece. Even if I do think the scenes go on too long, there's always something to look at. But I will say, this is probably the best film that I have checked at least 5 times to see how much time the running time was still left in it while I was rewatching it. It does have those moments. And so, and so if I'm going to fault the film, it's a weird thing to say that a film is too ambitious and has too much going on, but he also uses 11 millimeter lenses for the exteriors. And what, again, that does is give you a much larger looking area than the area that they're shooting in. And it's a great effect. And when he moves down to the 9 millimeter, which this was a brand new lens at the time, I think it was a 9.7, which the smallest lens that in 35 millimeter film they make now, I think, is an 8.7. So I mean, it's that close to being the smallest lens in the world. But you can see that it actually bends the frame a little bit, and he's using that for close-ups, and he knows that it's going to bend the frame. It's called fisheye. When you have a lens that's wide, it's pulling in so much information that it kind of bends at the side. He uses that using those close-ups behind those magnifiers that they're constantly using to magnify those tiny little screens for one of the best jokes in the film, because of course you're thinking, why didn't they just make the screens bigger? And for shooting all of those Rube Goldberg devices like the alarm clock and things like that, he uses that really, really tiny little lens that you're literally taking a close-up and you're putting people and objects in the audience's face that way. But when that's every single shot in a film, then after a while, I kind of got visually bored. Because if you think about it, if you shoot a film from just one angle all the way through, for 2 hours and 21 minutes, it is going to kind of get visually monotonous, no matter how great the scenery is, and no matter how great those sets are, and they are spectacular.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna argue something here.
I would be disappointed if you didn't.
If we're talking about the absurdity in the film, especially with Pinter, especially with Beckett, what happens in theatrical absurdity in theater is that they're most of the time they're confined in these rooms, in these kind of the space is closing down on them, and that's what happens in this film.
Excellent. Yeah, see, Endgame. Beckett's Endgame, where it takes place in that cramped little, and they have to peek out that little hole in the.
Exactly.
Yeah. I felt that. Yes, I absolutely felt that, and those lenses do a great job of portraying that. So yes, you are 100% correct. And the fact that it makes you feel claustrophobic throughout the entire film is achieved wonderfully, and without those lenses he wouldn't be able to do that. But in scenes like the when he's writing "I love you" on the wall or on the front of the windshield of the truck, in scenes like the the opening with the cutting of the floor to get the Buttle Tuttle mistake and things like that, where he's using those exact same lenses. You know, where he's not creating a claustrophobic atmosphere, it does visually seem monotonous to me that he's using the exact same lenses that he is using for those effects. And I think it dulls the effect by having it having it, you know, by never using a lens larger than 14 millimeters. You know, if he were to use like that 25.5 millimeter lens that Kubrick used for Danny on the trike in The Shining, you know, once in a while, then I think the effect of the really wide lenses when you go into the ministry would have been better. But again, that's not me calling that a flaw in the film. That is me just kind of reflecting on my most recent view and why maybe I found this film duller than I possibly should have. Considering,
Okay,
you know, all the
I
great
also
things, and I'm saying this is a very good film.
I'm gonna answer that too, because if we want to compare this to Pinter's kind of absurdism, you know, that okay, what happens in Pinter is how does he use this absurdity with dialogues, with words, which is exactly here, like the repetition of word. What happens when Bob Hoskins and the other plumber, they enter the room, they keep repeating those
And
words,
that is
the
so
absurdity.
Pinteresque. Yeah, and that is so
So
Pinteresque because
Pinter, so Pinter.
and that was an improv that originally actually he had dialogue.
Okay,
The other one did, and they just decided on the day to try that.
and with the
And
lenses, and again with the lenses, again I'm gonna refer to Pinter. What happens is, like, Pinter has this, he, you know, all those things that Beckett and UNESCO, they all use. But what Pinter does is he creates, with atmosphere, he creates the sense of menace and threat. And that's what I meant by the architecture here. And what you said about with the different uses of lenses and the fisheye and those wides and that kind of deform the faces, give them kind of like Soundgarden Black Hole Sun kind of, like, you know,
distortion,
LSD face. Yeah,
distortion.
distort faces and all that. You know, it demonstrates this demonstration of anxiety and this, you know, this complete despair and
Right,
threat
which
and
is
this constant
it's
threat.
grotesque, and grotesque is rule one of the theater of the absurd is the use of grotesque. Yes, no, I
And
agree
we
with you
have
100%.
dreams,
It
and the
didn't it
dreams are so important here. We need this contradiction between that world and the
Well,
world of
yeah,
dreams.
Yazzie, do you remember what Terry Gilliam's original title for this film was?
9084 and a half.
Right, and what does the half refer to?
The 88 and a half Fellini.
Exactly. Because and that was his inspiration for those dream sequences was Fellini's eight, not just Fellini's 8.5, but Fellini, you know, right?
I think we
And
have to let others chip in. Let's
So
like others. What do you
can I
think?
actually ask? Can I actually ask, like, so why is the film called Brazil? I don't have an answer for that. I'm just asking.
I have the answer to that.
Yes, the
Actually,
song.
if I may read a quote from Terry Gilliam. However, he begins this quote with, "I hope this story is true. I've told it so many times I can't remember," which brings us back to something High pointed out about Steven Spielberg last week, is you can't always take these directors at their word. But his answer was, and this is a scene that ended up getting cut from the film, that he was um, he was at a beach in Port Talbot, which is one of those coal mining towns, and the beach was completely covered with coal dust. And he saw somebody listening to the radio, and while suntanning on this coal dust covered beach, and their towel was covered in coal dust, and he was covered with coal dust, and he was getting in this wonderful Latin escapist romantic music that had nothing to do with the world he was in. And as it turns out, it was not in the film, but he said, but to me, that was what the film was about. Originally, the song I had in mind was Ry Cooder's Maria Elena, but I changed it to Aquaderio do Brazil. So that is so Brazil is a state of mind in this film, and the repeated use of the song is the reference to the title. But some of the other titles that they came up with, there are.
Wait.
Oh,
I'm
go
gonna
ahead.
add something to that because that's so beautiful. So the whole movie is also about a revolution, this change, like something is happened, like against the system and all. So and the film is called Brazil. So there's this very famous quote from Allende, uh, like that's like Salvatore Allende, that says that there is no revolution without a song. And that was also the inspiration for using a song from South America and put it there. And yeah, that was one of the other things that I found so beautiful. First of all, the quote of Allende, because there isn't actually a revolution without a song. And yeah, and the song itself.
Excellent. I didn't know that part. I was taking that because I listened to the Terry Gilliam, which you can listen to just his commentary track on YouTube by itself. You don't actually have to have the Criterion Collection to do that. So what I did was just basically pop it on YouTube on my phone in the background and have the film down very low volume. So and watched it that way. The other titles for this film were things like The Ministry of Torture, which I think would have been a good title. That's Why the Bourgeois Sucks. And Another Bad Day for a Fry, which I have no idea how that would have gone, but that was Sid Sheinberg wanted to actually retitle it, even though it was being distributed in Europe as Brazil at the time. Again, we're not going to pile on Sid, because this is the guy who discovered Steven Spielberg, and he did a lot of great things, as well. So anyway.
There's, I think personalities can play a big role. It could just be that the Gilliam and Terry's and Sid's personalities just didn't mesh, and so they might have gotten more intransient in their respective positions for that reason. Also, Terry likes to do things his way, so well, for example, he it's not common for a director to kind of badmouth people in his film, but he had some not particularly kind things to say about Tom Stoppard, about DeNiro, about Kim Greist. I'll go through them quickly.
That's great. Yeah. Hi. Can you give me just a sec though, because I want to hear these, and I've got I'm having an issue with it. So I apologize. I don't want to miss them. Okay, now it's good. Sorry about that.
Okay, sure. So before I start that, let me just say very briefly on the dream sequence. My understanding is the original Gilliam's original idea was to have this one long dream sequence start the film. So it's just one very long thing. And then they looked at it and said, um, you know, it doesn't really work to do it that way. Let's split up the sequences. And as you mentioned, they had more sequences than they used in any version of the film. There's a sequence with eyes that they felt just didn't fit. That sounds like a really cool sequence, but they felt it just didn't. It just kind of stopped the film. So, but his original concept was to like do, I don't know, like 15 or 20 minutes of dream sequence to start the film. So there was he was reevaluating on the fly with Tom Stoppard, who again is a brilliant writer. His gripe with Stoppard was he wanted to work with a writer, like he wanted to be in the room working side by side. So in other words, it's like his film, and it's not the writer's film, it's his film. He wanted a collaboration, a live, moment by moment collaboration. And
You don't
Stoppard,
hire Tom Stoppard to do that. You do, yeah. He had the wrong dude then.
well, I mean, it's not, I mean, it's not the way most writers work. Um, and Stoppard said, no, I don't work that way. I will give you a draft, and then you'll read it. You'll give me feedback, and then I'll write another draft. And then you can give me feedback, and I'll write a third draft, and then we're done. Unless you want to hire me, for more money. Um, that is the standard way to work with a writer, and I think that Gilliam really didn't like the idea of it. On some level, he wasn't involved on a granular basis, and so when he got his 3 drafts, and then he went and hired a friend of his to work with him the way that he wanted to work, which is in the room together as collaborators, and he doesn't really give Stoppard a whole lot of credit. I mean, he says he can't remember what parts what parts Stoppard contributed, as if Stoppard was this, contributions were minor. I doubt that's true, but it's impossible to know without seeing Stoppard's scripts.
This
But
is the most Tom Stoppard film ever made. This is more Tom Stoppard than Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
so
I gotta love directors.
So it's like, on the one hand, he's fighting with Sid about control of a film. On the other hand, he's kind of pretending that Stoppard made no significant contribution. So it's not, again, it's not a black and white situation, because on some level, Gilliam is in the power position with Stoppard, and he's not treating Stoppard that well. So, so that's one thing. Then DeNiro, I thought DeNiro's performance was brilliant. Um, Kind of stands alone in the movie. And Gilliam griped that De Niro was a tremendous pain to work with, and that because he kept asking for details and wanting to do research, and asking them to shoot a scene over and over, and he'd scheduled a week for De Niro, and it ended up taking 2 weeks. But look, the end result is De Niro delivers arguably the best performance in the movie. He doesn't ever acknowledge, Gilliam doesn't acknowledge that. And I don't think it's very, it's very gentlemanly of him to at least say, but De Niro's performance was spectacular. And also, when he was fighting for his film, he got De Niro to go with him on a Good Morning America, or one of those major talk shows, to say, release my film. De Niro at the time did not give interviews. He never appeared on those shows. He agreed to do it for Gilliam. That was a big deal. So I think he was less than gracious in his comments about De Niro. And then Kim Greist, who plays Jill, apparently he hated her and her performance. And he said, in retrospect, he auditioned a whole bunch of women. He picked her. And then he said, in retrospect, I learned that experience really counts. So, I mean, he just really trashed her. And he also said that, no, I mean, in her case, maybe it was deserved, because he ended up cutting a lot of his scenes with her. She had a diminished role in the film because he was so dissatisfied with the performance that she delivered. Plus, he said she was a pain to work with. So, at least, De Niro delivered a brilliant performance. I'm guessing Tom Stoppard delivered brilliant work too. In Kim's case, I'm willing to believe she didn't. But
Yeah, you can
so
see her in the shorter cut, because a lot of those takes were used for that version, and he does have a point. She's very stiff.
yeah. So
And
I mean, but still, it's a little unusual for a director to trash an actor, even when the actor didn't work out, because ultimately it was the director who chose her. He had his pick of many of the best actresses in Hollywood, and he chose her. So, and she's like, she has no power at all. So,
yeah, her other credit was Piranha Part 2, I think. That was it.
so I mean, it's not like a clash of the titans. He's got all the power. So, I just, my point is, Gilliam is not Mr. Sunshine, and
Well, and he's become a problematic old man on Facebook now too. He's misgendering people, and instead of fighting against the system, he's one of these. The woke mob is coming and taking all our fun, and I can't make any jokes about black people anymore. And what's wrong with this country? And he become very reactionary. So yeah, but and Sila and I talked about this over in his room. We as consumers of this media have to come to terms with the people who make this art are not necessarily going to be good people. We have to enjoy the art on their own terms without saying that
I'm
we'd
just
have them
saying
over
it's
for
it's
dinner.
not black and white. I'm not saying he's a bad person. I'm just saying this whole thing is multi-layered. It's just not black and white. You can't just say, Gilliam is 100% right, and other people 100% wrong. It's just more complicated. It's a lot. It's real life. Um, it sounds like he is a difficult guy to work with. Um, but and on that level, it's impressive that Brazil turned out as well as it did, and it is the the fact that he is difficult, I think, contributes to the integrity of the film, and that he made most other people wouldn't have made a film this dark, because they wouldn't want to be perceived as being grumpy or dark or what have you. So I think on that level, in some ways, his personality worked to the worked to making the film a better film. But his un, un, his reluctance to bend So yeah, so I'm just saying it's complicated, but his reluctance to bend also kept him from making the film more commercial and reaching a wider audience. And I find that tug of war to be fascinating, because these are creative decisions that you know all creators struggle with. So that's why that was the thing I kind of fastened on, because I understand, uh, seeing, I understand that, watching this and going, especially at the time it was made, hey, this is not going to make us a lot of money. I don't know if we're going to get our money back. I understand that concern. I also understand that the ending, uh, the, the actual ending, is a brilliant ending, and one that stays with you. Um, and so, I'm just saying it's complicated.
Well, and do you find it ironic that the only reason Universal made its money back was because of the publicity that all the controversy that Gilliam started brought to this film? So that's why you had, for instance, the LA Film Critics named this the best film of the year before it had even seen a theater in the United States.
Well, that's because
Is
Gilliam screened it almost secretly and against Universal's specific orders, going against Universal. He screened
But
it like at a university.
And if he
For
hadn't, Universal would have lost their bottoms on this film because it never would have gotten the publicity, and there's no way this would have made more than a couple of $1 million at the box office.
and that's what made ultimate that award full page ad in Variety saying Sid Sheinberg released my movie. That's what he got him to buckle. And by the way, Sid referred to Terry at one point as a terrorist. He actually called him a terrorist, but Gilliam was successful. He got his way. Um, so, but one other thing, you're saying they made their money back. I kind of would need to know what the actual number is, because if you invested $11 million in a movie, and the
They made
movie
about
made,
15. Universal made about $15 million. Fox made about $7 million. So
well, you're saying it grossed, not it made.
no, that's the money they made back because they have to give half the money back to the theaters that show it.
Well,
So
it's not just a matter of giving it back to the theaters. It's also a matter of um, the general rule is that the marketing budget for a film is going to be roughly equivalent to the budget for the film. So if you want to break even, you need to make twice as much as you invested in the production. So if they put in 11 and they got back 15,
yeah,
and they
they put in
lost money,
they including marketing, they put in $11 million. The contract was for $11 million altogether. So that includes
including the marketing.
that's top down. Yeah, he
Okay.
actually shot this film for about $7 million.
Okay.
So when you
No,
look at
that's great to know. That answers my question. Thank you.
yeah,
isn't
Universal
that
made it.
what isn't that what in all the British movies that we saw, that's how they market their movies? We talked about on the last room of 2023 that they all use this counter psychology on
The
marketing
movie
their
no one
films.
wanted
Yeah,
you to see.
the movie that no one wants you to see. That's what they did. That I think this he inherit his peers on that one.
Gold star for remembering that one, Yazzie. I'm going to turn to Vern so that he doesn't spend the week arguing with me in his head, and ask him to get those arguments out now.
I have a question for Vern if he's around. Vern, okay, that they say that this film has neo-noir aspects, and I saw a very Western things in the film, especially since all the heroes and all the saviors and the revolutionary characters, they're American, and kind of the anti-heroes are British. Isn't anyone found this interesting in the film? And also, if you remember during that Sexy Beast room, I said something like I kind of connected neo noir with uh, Don Quixote. I said that he has this kind of savior mindset, and uh, like he sends himself on this journey to save this the girl. I'm not going to use the term. And yes, so do you think which one weighs more for you, the neo noir aspect or the Western aspect?
Burns getting a burrito. How about we turn over to Leonard, whose first viewing of this film that it was, and ask him, is this a film you'd watch again?
Yeah, 100%. I'll definitely watch it again. Hopefully, like, soon. Um, yeah, definitely. Especially like not only because I think it has rewatchability. It's obviously very complex, but also because I couldn't quite understand everything that happens within this first viewing. So yeah, 100%.
Sila, question for you about the music. Did it drive you as nuts as it did me?
It did not. And that's another, as you well know, that's another topic that's very vibrant in my head, namely the the whole the whole world of music as an accompaniment, which does not only go for cinema, unfortunately, goes for supermarkets and things like that, but under accompaniment, accompanying music, to me, it's not enough to speak, as I have done, about background music, because, like we have talked about several times, Caravaggio, in my opinion, was not background, was not in the background, was not made for the background, it was not placed on the background. And in this film, this craziness, this absurdity, this collage of situations, I think actually the music, because it's one piece, is really one song. That is what, in a way, that's what is keeping it together. So I would not see this as background music in this case. And Yassi wanted me to read No hay revoluciones sin canciones. And obviously the key to that phrase is the right translation, what you wrote, what you said before. But here it rhymes, revoluciones, canciones. So that's the only difference.
Thank you. I know there was something there missing. Thank you, Sila.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's nothing like being able to hear it in Spanish, but that applies for every language.
Yeah, it has the sense of strawberries also when you say it in Spanish.
Let's not go into details on that one. Thank you.
So another of Sila's point is, about this film being satire, being slapstick, being a comedy, and I
I,
agree with
I
him.
must I must contradict that. I wouldn't throw those three terms together. For me, they're very distinctly different.
Okay.
Well, slapstick and satire for me are not the same. And comedy,
No. I'm not saying they're the same. I'm saying that
okay,
those are three elements of the film. Slapstick is definitely a big element of this film. I mean, that Rube Goldberg device, the elevator, the fighting back and forth over the half of the desk. I mean, this film, a good 25% of it could have been in a Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton silent slapstick.
yes, but because I read a lot of systematical attacks on society, I cannot refer to it as slapstick. For me, that's satire and not more.
Could you explain that a little better? Because I'm kind of confused as what because during the act of of a slapstick scene, so when he's crawling out of the elevator,
Yes.
uh, what is that satiring?
You got me there. I was more thinking about the pushing the desk, looking for your own space, and
Oh, now that's a
yeah,
satire of yes.
yeah.
Well, you could actually read a lot of things that's satire, but basically modern life.
And as we all know, Gilliam is the same. Well, is connected, not the same, but connected to Monty Python
No, he's not. Yeah, he's a member. Yeah, in good
as
standing.
as silly as they could get. To me, I cannot. For example, just to give you an example, I can never ever compare anything that I have ever seen from Monty Python or from John Cleese. I can never compare it to the Three Stooges or any slapstick that we know from the United States. I just cannot, because
Yeah,
always the background is a very, very heavy one, very critical one, very intellectual turn. I'm going to laugh at you, but
very Brit, very British. Yes, there's a darkness behind it yes, I agree with
that's
you
just the way I
100%.
see it. That's just the way I see it. I might be wrong,
And
but that's
and
how I see
no,
it.
well, and it's the way I see it too, and I might be wrong, but I would agree with you. Does anybody
I
else have a? Yeah.
I can explain the satire in the elevator scene. It's so okay. First of all, it's obviously it's because he wants to keep going to uh one, again, this labyrinth of bureaucratic departments. It's been
Correct. Yeah.
exaggerated, and this inefficiency, the lack of control of the system. And we have this whole system with all these techs, and they're trying to tell us that these technology, they're for you, they're made for your good, they're there to help you. And every time that we cross paths with a piece of technology in this film, it malfunctions,
It
and it
never works.
reflects chaos. It never works, and it's non-essential. And that's the frustration that it causes, and this whole adds to this labyrinth and makes everything more complex and unpredictable. And this unpredictable is satire through and through.
No, and that's very good. And throughout the film, yeah, a lot of the pranks are around this idea of a government that controls everything, and yet nothing works. Central services, and that it's that fascination with the tubing and all the Rube Goldberg devices and all of that. And it's too bad Vern's not here because a thing I had about the rebels in this film is there actually a rebellion? Are they real? Because one of the readings that I got on, I don't know how many viewings in, but one of my viewings, a decade ago, was that perhaps when she says to him, "Have you ever met a rebel, or have you ever met a revolutionary, or what have you? What she's saying is, of course you haven't, because there aren't any. You know.
That's how I understood. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could go either way. I'm here. I had to eat dinner, so I disappeared. But I
That's
think,
exactly what I told it. I said his burritos are here.
yeah, but I think it could go, I think it could really go. It's ambiguous. It's like 1984. Like, is there an enemy or isn't there? And it's like you've never met any. But somebody is planting the bombs. The bombs are going off, and they say, at the beginning, it's been a 13-year war, and he calls it beginner's luck. And that's the thing, like I work at like I was in New York City when September 11th happened. I've never met a terrorist, but I know they exist, sort of. But if you know anybody who knows people who are on the other side, like they don't feel like they're terrorists. And in a lot of cases, they're not. Like they have very good rationales for what they're doing. But I think the point is like it kind of doesn't matter, And I think with this film, that's one of the things that I like is that, like, one of the things that happens in the film, and this is like the really ingenious thing about it, is a lot of the problems that Jill gets in, like when they arrest her and the charges that they charge her with, it's actually Sam was the cause of all of that. And when his buddy Jack is kind of reciting what the charges are, it's like they're all things that he did. And it's the same thing with his apartment. It's like he was the cause. Like Robert De Niro's character, he asked for his permission before he puts the doohickey in the wall, and he grants his permission. And then everything that they charge him with are things that he caused. So I think it's almost like we are the terrorist. The terrorist is
and
in the mirror.
and that's very British cinema too. That goes back to Ealing comedy, where their heroes were always the cause of everyone else's demise, while while they kept thinking of themselves as the heroes. That's that's a theme that we go over time and time and time again when we're dealing with English film, which is something I think that kind of separates the English film from American films, where our comedy stars, we have to have a lot more empathy for them in the American films. Even if it's like an Adam Sandler comedy, where he's usually playing somebody who's not very bright. You've always got kind of the sappy music, and you're always pulling for him. I don't really think you're ever pulling for Lowry in this film, really. Are you?
Well, also the fact that he, on paper, he kills Jill means he's also using the system to his benefit.
But then, ironically,
Absolutely.
she dies in real life.
Well, no,
Yes. Well,
he
I never
kills
saw
yes,
that.
Jill because yeah, he
I,
kills.
I,
I
ne-
mean, the
I
fact
never
he
see her
deleted.
being killed.
Oh, they shoot her.
Well, it
Yep,
depends.
right in
It
the head.
How do I
depends.
know?
It
In the head.
depends because there is the love conquers all ending where she doesn't. So it's like a metaverse.
Okay, we're
Yeah,
talking about the
correct.
good. We're talking about the good versions of this film.
Yeah, the love
In
conquers
any
all.
of the
That's
in
that's
any of
not
the three good
canon.
versions, yeah, in any of the three good versions of this film, and matter of fact, Michael Palin says she died, and he says, "Oh no, that was me," and with the paperwork, and
Correct.
he says
Correct.
he died. No, well, she died twice, so it's
Yeah.
not only do we see her
Oh,
die,
okay.
but it's
Okay.
actually reaffirmed by Michael Palin's character. So yeah, in anything that Gilliam actually created, yes, Lowry actually causes Jill to die. So he brings nothing but trouble on all these people.
Well,
To
also
Vern.
one of my favorite scenes in the film is when he goes to the party, and it's the first major interaction we see him have with people outside of the office. And I was just delighted that nobody likes him. like there's this girl that they're trying to hook him up with, and she's disgusted with him. You know, I
Everybody
just
is.
thought it was hilarious. It's like he's not. I mean, this is the hero of a film, and he's not. He's not really a very likable guy.
Oh
And
well, and
again,
no, we get that at the restaurant too, don't you think? When he refuses to use the number and said like I want to stay, but then that's undercut because of course when the food comes out, it's just like it looks like cat food, and so it really didn't matter what he ordered.
yeah, no,
So
that waiter is not a very likable person. But I mean, he
no,
goes to the parties with his own people. This is his social circle, and nobody in his own social circle really likes him. And that, I mean, that's something that it takes a certain kind of person with a really tough personality to write a character like that.
and to
There aren't
play
a lot
that
of people
role
who.
and to play that role as well as Price does, I think it's a great performance because of that.
Well, he does. It's a great performance, but I mean, that's what actors do. What there's the roles they're given. But I mean, to make the hero of your movie be not especially likable, that was a challenge of his role, really, because he's written as not really likable, but his challenge as an actor is to make himself likable enough that he can still carry the movie, and that's what is a large part of the brilliance of that performance, that he manages that very delicate balancing act. But
Yeah.
very few filmmakers would make their hero be so clearly uh, unlikable, not liked by the people, almost everybody around him, and at the same time, yeah, be the source of all of this havoc. But but again, he does very gentle things. You know, the most extreme act he does is to delete her, and at the time, it seems like a heroic act. Though, if you think about it for 2 seconds, um, you could see how that could end up. So, yeah, it's kind of, the I that's why it's this constant tug of war with me, that on the one hand I admire the brilliance and of the integrity of the choices. On the other hand, they're so clearly uncommercial choices. It's one of the things that I think is fascinating about the film.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say something about the hero thing that you're talking about. First of all, it's so similar to Theo in Children of Men. On the other hand, okay, everything. If we, this is the traditional concept of hero is subverted. Like Sam. Yes, he doesn't like fit through this qualities of the hero that we're familiar with, but in this dystopian society, his desire to be free and to be against the system and manipulate the system and fight and all these struggles that he go through, for why he accepts this position, because he wants to go find love, which is, like if we want to think about this story like similar to 1984, this is a kind of sin. This is not, I know it's not the same thing here in this film, but still in this oppressive world, that kind of, I think makes this character, it blurs this line between this, uh, like make him not a normal, mundane civilian. What he does is kind of heroic. Also at the end, like as you said, like you mentioned, throughout the film, we all see like no one likes him. And what happens when he finally gets the girl? Like when he earned this self-respect, when he subvert his job, when he decides to stand up, when he goes against the system. So this this inner revolution in him, I think, kind of make him, and at the end, he doesn't give up. He doesn't just, in the interrogation. So, I think the ending kind of make him a hero,
Yeah,
Vern, you
in a
unmuted.
traditional sense.
yeah, and I'm gonna triple down on what Yassi is saying. As number one, as someone who has identified with this character since I was 16, and I think I feel like I go through my life where I'm a very Sam Lowry type character. When I do my community activism, when I'm working on my job, when I'm in the building in my co-op, people can't, a lot of people can't stand me, even in our rooms, believe it or not, but people tolerate and respect me. And the thing is, I really don't like anybody. And I think in this society, like actually, people do like him. His mother dotes on, she doesn't understand him, but she's doing all these things on his behalf, and obviously she loves him. The same thing with his boss. He's like a tool for his boss, but his boss is a kind of despicable character, but he likes him to the extent that he's serves a utilitarian purpose. And I think that's the thing that this show is kind of saying. It's like this is a very utilitarian society. I think, to the extent that he knows him at all, like the Robert De Niro character, he does things for him that he doesn't have to, even if it's like a dream scenario, So I think it's not about like, it's like a reflection of what this society is. Like, can there be like in a society like this? Like what would it mean if people in the society like you? And the thing that I've always liked about his character, the thing that I really love about his character is, we keep calling these things that he's having dreams, but for a lot of them, he's not asleep. He's awake. He's daydreaming or he's fantasizing, because there are many scenes where there's a cut where he's having that fantasy and then he's not asleep. It's like he's on the train or he's in his office, the only scene, in fact, where he really is dreaming, I think maybe there are two scenes where he's having this fantasy and then he wakes from the dream. But I think there are like three scenes where he's like on the train or he's in the torture chair or he's, I think it's kind of making a point about the kind of society that this is. And then also, I think this time when I watched it early on, um, when we're in his apartment at the beginning and all the systems are malfunctioning, like the toaster and the water gauges, and I think the way Jonathan Pryce plays it and the way that Gilliam directs it, it's like that's just normal. Like when he drinks the cup of sugar, it has like a little bit of fluid in it, and then it's like twice as much sugar in it. He like drinks it down like it's a kind of a normal occurrence. He doesn't like spit it out. He just kind of drinks it down, and then he goes for the bread and he twists it back and forth. And so I
Yeah,
think
but
that,
he throws away that perfectly good piece of bread, even though it's just got a tiny little bit of coffee on it. It was still
yeah,
good.
Of
It
course,
was
because
still
this is the
good.
criticism
yeah,
of consumerism.
yeah,
That's that kind of.
yeah,
Well, can I drill down into what you said, Vern? Because that raises a very interesting point. Because at the opening, he's not very ambitious. They said that, there's nothing going on. You can't get ahead. And he says, yeah, it's wonderful that way. But you've got to ask yourself, in a totalitarian society like that one, maybe that's his form of rebellion. He's doing the least amount possible in a harmful system, and by doing that, he's causing the least amount of harm. So to kind of put what Vern said into, and I'm not saying this is my theory behind the film, but I am saying that it's viable, and what Vern said made sense to me and spoke to me. Would you want to be liked by these people? Because the way they're viewed in this film, and maybe it's because it's from Lowry's point of view, they're pretty awful, and the society that he lives in that dislikes him is pretty awful.
But why are we speaking about him being disliked? Because first of all, I don't see him as a hero of the film. So why is there a problem with him being disliked by everyone?
Well, then that's a good question too. The answer I don't think is in. I would reject the question because I don't think we're saying there's a problem with him being disliked. I think we're saying there's an audience a perception problem, and might have gone too high. I don't think anybody's saying I have a problem with this film because I could not identify with Sam Lowry.
No, I understand that, but because there has been a lot of talk about how he was not liked, and
what a bold choice! And what a bold choice that was to not have. Yes, yeah.
It's okay that he's not liked because he doesn't. I don't recall him doing anything of use for the whole film, except being that character.
Yes, exactly.
So for me, the hero,
and he fucks everything up and gets a lot of really good people killed. Which, to back to my original point, is very Beckett, very Pinter, very Tom Stoppard, very Theater of the Absurd, and very much an ongoing theme of a lot of the films that we discuss in this room.
And Orwellian, of course.
Yeah, yes.
A comment on the side. I'm wondering if the Americans in the room might have my same difficulties dividing his mother from her role in the old show called Soap, because it's exactly the same character.
Katherine Hellman's the actress, and by the way, love that show. That was the show that Billy Crystal, for you youngins in the audience, Leonard, there was this show called Soap where Billy Crystal got his start, and Katherine Hellman played the matriarch, and yes, it's the exact same part. And it's pretty much the same part she played in Gilliam's Time Bandits back in 1982. So, yeah. She's very good at that one part.
And one question for Sila.
Yes, that's correct.
If Robert De Niro is our hero, what makes him the hero? His outfit, the latex outfit, like.
Well, that's the whole football team dilemma, isn't it? Because he's he's the guy who won't play by the rules in a society where he is the hero because he's wearing the white hat, Yassi. Because he's wearing the white hat because he's been given the heroic line. Get in, get out. We're all in this shit together. All of that.
He's always there at the right time to save the day.
I was trying to fight for you. Vern, I was trying to say Sam fight against the system too. They both have the similar things. So yeah, I was fighting for you. Sorry it didn't land it. He doesn't have the hat.
Yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm trying to think. So I just started rereading Don Quixote. And I'm supposed to be reading it with a friend, and we're having problems syncing. But there's one thing that happens. Like if you've ever read Don Quixote, it's divided into two separate volumes. And in the first one, he's kind of this idealistic, delusional old man who's going on all these misadventures and getting his ass kicked at every turn. And in the second volume, he's kind of tired of getting his ass kicked. And what's happening is people know that he's crazy. Like everyone who he encounters, they're like, okay, this is this really crazy old man. And either they play in on it or they try to exploit him or they kick his ass. In the second volume, he's kind of tired of getting his ass kicked. And what happens is the reality shifts around him. So he's kind of taken on this, he's kind of written down his misadventures and people who have met him and people who have read the books. And now what happens is everyone who encounters him, they're kind of enthralled and enchanted by, this kind of man of principles, in this age where there aren't any. And so people around him start play acting like he is what he's saying he is. And I was thinking, like I've gone through phases in my life where I've gone through major changes. And then I know lots of people who've gone through major changes. Like I have a friend now, I just found out on Facebook, like a year ago, and she's in her 60s. A year ago, her husband left her. And she didn't reveal it until she posted on Facebook because she wrote to the New York Times this kind of modern love essay about her marriage falling apart. They didn't publish it. So like after a year, she was like, well, the Times didn't publish it, so I'm going to put it on Facebook. And so like 3 days ago, I'm reading this and like a lot of her friends are reading it and are commenting on it. And what she's been doing is she's been trying to reassemble her life in retrospect. And I think what happens when you go through these changes and then you look back on your life, there is no clear demarcation of when the fantasy stopped. It's kind of all blurred in. And I think that is the thing that's happening in this film. There is no clear demarcation because when it happens, when your identity is changing, or when you go through some life-altering event, it's kind of gradual. It's not something that happens in a snap of a finger. It's not an abracadabra and then alakazam and you're different. There's like this gradual changing in your mindset, in the way that you see yourself, in the way that other people see you. And I think that the way that they depict that in this film is really brilliant because things are off, but everything isn't off until the final reel when we see what's happening.
That's excellent. I love that you tied that in, Vern. Go ahead, Hi.
Well, you know, everything starts with an idea, with a vision. So if you want change, first you dream the change, and then you start taking actions to make that change happen. So it's reasonable that he would have these ideas of how things could be different, and then he starts making these very mild rebellions. But in this society, even a mild rebellion ends up being disastrous. And I think one of the things that I most appreciate is how many things in the society don't work. The degree to which things malfunction, because it's to me about the banality of evil, because this is at core a really evil society, and but it's at a very banal, a very absurdly banal way, and there's a truth to that. It's and that's part of a horror, is the level of banality and dysfunction, and the bombings being something that people just accept. It's all really, these are all elements that I think make the film especially brilliant, because they're
Can I follow up on that point real quick, Hi?
sure.
Because
Go
I
ahead.
am going to have to start winding this room down pretty soon. isn't it interesting that we don't actually meet anybody above like an executive vice president in this film? We never see any of the evil, so to speak, the top people. The top person we see is the Ian Richardson character, and his entire job seems to be the same as those gifts, to say yes, no, no, yes, yes, no, no, yes, and that's his entire function. But everybody that we see is kind of a minion in this. We never see a top structure, supervillain who's in charge of any of this, and we never see any of the people in charge. And I
Because the
wonder,
villain is the system. It's the
yeah, I was gonna
No,
say,
system and
that's the
well,
everyone and
Pinter.
the
That's the
complicity.
Pinter thread.
or is the film maybe saying that no one's in charge? That
No,
that
but the
that there
point,
are no higher ups. Maybe there are no rebels and there are no higher ups. Maybe all of this entire system is all just bureaucracy run by minions.
And that's
yeah,
what the panopticon that I said about that the whole architecture and what it symbolized is that no one's watching you, but the mentality is they're watching you, like the Pavlovian kind of. You've been treated like animals. That right now your reflection, that's how you react. Even though there's no one watching you, you still act like you are being watched, and you feel this constant threat and fear.
Yeah. I have to say, being a New Yorker during 9/11, and I was in this group, New Yorkers Say No to War, where almost as soon as the Osama bin Laden attack happened, I was a young kid, but there were lots of people from the Vietnam era who knew what was coming. And they could tell that this yellow cake thing was a lie. They weren't allowing the inspectors in. And it's like, we wanted to go to war. And we did go to war, during the entire like Bush administration. And, that's the thing, like Kissinger was there and Dick Cheney was there, like all these dudes that should that we should consider evil. Like even in real time, if we didn't, in retrospect, we should be able to look at the collateral damage and the casualties and the death and destruction, and we should be able to point out what the evil is. But it's like the Obamas are hanging out with the Bushes, they're partying, like he's got his reputation back. And Kissinger, when he died, he wasn't Dr. Evil, and so like Yassi is saying, the evil, even in reality is absurd. In reality, there is no evil. Like if Kissinger isn't evil, if Nixon wasn't evil, if Bush wasn't evil, there can be no evil. There is no evil.
Well, and in his second term, George Bush was elected by a majority of the eligible voters of the United States of America, despite the fact that they knew he had invaded the wrong country. So you have to ask yourself the same question we asked in If, which is that is history made by great and evil men, or is it made by whole societies that decide to commit evil?
well, that's exactly what's
Vern,
happening with
what about
Trump right
Evil
now.
Knievel?
I mean, that's what's you've got you've got the entire Republican Party enabling Trump, who has already been essentially convicted of sexual assault. He's on trial right now for the second time, just to determine how much more money he needs to pay for it, for his lying about it. It's yeah, there are, but I mean, I think the point of our not meeting the people in charge is that it's not one person, because it would be too easy. If you could say, well, it's this guy's fault, he's a supervillain, then it puts all the onus on that one person. But by not showing the people at the top, it's like, no, it's like a virus that's infected this entire society. And the cure of it is for enough people to rise up and say, we don't accept this. And so the terrorists are the heroes. Tuttle, Tuttle is a hero, but the bombers are effectively the heroes in this movie as well. And Sam is a hero in the sense that he's rebelling. He's just really bad at it. But
Well, early in
not
the film, it's a different kind of rebellion. He is doing the least amount possible to prop this up. You know, he doesn't want promotion. He doesn't want, you know, he's not ambitious. And so that, you know, and that is his act of rebellion. He is by refusing to be an active part of the system, he is rebelling against the system. Which
well.
maybe that's what Vern sees when he looks to Sam as somebody that he identifies with.
Well, I that's an interesting interpretation. I interpreted it differently, which is that um, he wants to stay as invisible as possible because he knows how dangerous the system is, and your best bet at survival is for the system to not notice you, to just stay under the radar.
Yeah, which
So
is very 1984. Which is interesting to note that Terry Gilliam never read 1984.
yeah, he didn't read it, but he
But he
he
came to many of the
understood.
same conclusions.
He no, he understood. It's in the zeitgeist. You don't have to read it to know what 1984
Yeah,
is about.
that's a good point. That's a good point. You don't have to read the Bible to know what it means either. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was familiar. He was very familiar. I mean, the fact he was going to title film 1984 and a half, he
Yeah.
clearly was familiar with the concepts of 1984. You don't have
And
to
of course,
read
my
it.
early point, which we never really got to, is I think this film is just as much 8.5 as it is 1984. But that's which is fine because that probably would have put us down another rabbit hole, and we would have been here till midnight. So I'm
Not
actually
to
kind of
mention
happy,
the battleship Potemkin scene.
which I love. I rewound it and watched it a second time. You know that scene that where they send it up in the Brian De Palma uh, with the Robert De Niro one with Kevin Costner, The Untouchables, has nothing on that scene because you know she actually gets shot in the eye. That's so fucking great. Well, I'm going to start winding this room up, so I'm going to do kind of a once around last thoughts on Brazil, and then we are going to have to take a couple of minutes to because Yassi is choosing our next film because we had kind of left it open so that she could have input, you know, and ideas that may have come up in the 3 films that we did this week, which is a system we're kind of going with, which is that like I'm going to program 3 films, and then the 4th film is going to be something that kind of comes up in conversation. But before we do that, we're just going to kind of go in the order that you're sitting. So Leonard, last thoughts on Brazil? Oh, it's getting very, very late over there. He might have fallen asleep. I guess I'll go to Hi. Hi, last thoughts on Brazil.
I just I would just say don't give up on Clubhouse because my vision for today was that I at least was going to go the into Dawn's room and promote today's film because a lot of people love Brazil, and I think we would have gotten people from Dawn's room, and I think maybe would have had twice as many people, and it's just because of a Clubhouse bug that plan didn't work out. I mean,
And
my
I was planning on going along with you, Hi, just so you know. I had actually scheduled at work to get off at 1 o'clock so that I could do that. I
That
had traded
said,
shifts.
when I was heading over here, I noticed that Dawn's room was still going. So even though her room went past 4 p.m. today, so it's not that's not a 100% easy solution either. I'm just saying, whether you're on Clubhouse or whether you're here, take steps to keep promoting the room, letting people know about it, and reaching out to other places where film folks gather. So if you wanted to move to spaces, start posting on other film accounts on space on Twitter. Or else give Dawn's room idea a shot. But it would have to be for a film of the stature of Brazil, something that a lot of people will have already seen without having to do any homework. I was like, today would have worked out because I'm betting, a large percentage of Dawn's room had seen Brazil already, and they could just jump into a room and talk about it. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Which goes to show that Sid Sheinberg was completely wrong about this film then. Because obviously over time it's had a much larger impact than he thought it was going to.
Over time, but he was looking for upfront profits.
It is ironic, though, that thanks to Terry Gilliam's free publicity, he ended up making his money back. And he did, by the way, end up working with Gilliam again because, of course, Universal produced 12 Monkeys and hired Gilliam for that. So that just goes to show you, if you make your money back in Hollywood, all is forgiven. As far as the whole...
Who wrote... Gilliam did Gilliam write 12 Monkeys?
No, he directed 12 Monkeys, but Sid's company hired him to direct it.
Sid never had a problem with Gilliam. Sid had a problem with Gilliam as a writer. They always respected his abilities as a director.
Again, all was forgiven though when he wasn't punished by the studio for it. So that I guess is what I'm saying. As far as the whole Clubhouse thing goes, I'm going to make my mind up when I'm calmed down a little bit because, if you asked me right now, I wouldn't piss on that place if it was on fire. I don't make decisions when I'm angry. So I that's going to be something I think about, after I've got some space, if that makes any sense. Sila, last thoughts on Brazil?
Well, I have nothing specific to say outside of what I already mentioned. So I'm grateful that you people keep bringing me to watch some films that I don't know, some films that I had forgotten about, and just a possibility to dive deep into what these films mean as an art form, as a just energy amongst us. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, Sila. And Leonard and Vern are very good additions to this room. I would prefer that I have a room with Yassi and me and you people than a room twice as big with less good insights. Yassi, last thoughts on Brazil.
I don't know where to begin. So many things I wanted to say. First of all, I have 2 reading suggestions. One is the Battle of Brazil, Jack Matthews. That this is a book about all the troubles and that Gilliam went through to make this movie and screen it and all. So that's a very good read, very fascinating. It's just as good as Burden of Dreams, that documentary about Herzog on making Fritz Kralda. It's it's a read, and it's a very fascinating read. So I really recommend that. The other one is something with the kind of same theme, and it's Discworld. Of course, like if Leonard was here, he was definitely know. Eric, you must know, like Terry Pratchett, Discworld. It's amazing. I can't say how much I love those books. The world that he creates, and my favorite actually is Hogfather. That there's a death character there, and in that, like people see death the way like death looks different to different people because death is the manifestation of individuals' beliefs. It's That's why like I was keep saying that I think Sam and Jill, they're the same, or everything here is the creation of one's mind, because when I was rewatching, all I had in my head was Discworld and those
I
characters
highly
there.
recommend the book. Do not recommend the BBC television series.
Yeah, I heard that there are many adaptations of that. I haven't seen any of that. So yeah, but the books, they're
The
amazing.
BBC one was crap, so do not recommend. But highly recommend the book. I highly recommend.
Okay, and the other thing about like um Gilliam's fascination with Fellini, and you talked about the woman. You said how he presents women in his film. You know, he talks about Fellini. He says that I like my women the way Fellini presents his women. You know, and he's telling the truth. I don't want to lie. I don't want to be something that I'm not. So at least the way that he presents, he said it, he say it out loud in the interviews that these are authentic. I think this is what matters. Like if I go to watch a movie, I don't want to see like African American characters, Asian American characters, Native American characters, women characters, LGBTQ characters for the sake of diversity. I want to see authentic characters in movies, even if they're not like aligned with my thoughts, with my beliefs, even if they're not agreeable with my beliefs, but they're aligned with the story and they're complementary to the story. That's what matters to me. And I think that's Gilliam throughout his career. He's a believer in cinema, he's a believer in storytelling, and that's what he did. Even now that he's like creating all these things on Facebook, it's him. He's not lying, he's not hiding behind something that he's not. And I really, really appreciate it that he stood true to himself, you know. So, and the other thing that I'm going to finish by saying that, and is that I was watching this film, and like Vern said, how everything about this dystopia is true. Especially, maybe you're gonna laugh at this, but there is this part that when they attack that house to to arrest uh Tuttle Buttle, and they gave they gave the wife a receipt. And I think Vern can confirm that a few months back, actually, I told him about this, that sometimes in UN, when we go to rescue people, when we go to rescue kids, we give the parents the receipts for their kids. The other thing is that in some societies today, like in Iran, when they execute someone, to give you the corpse of the person that they executed because of their political ideas, they force the family to pay for the bullets. And they're not going to give you the corpse until you pay for the bullets. And you pay for everything, like all the period of time that that person was in prison. And I posted something in the link, which is like the story of two very young journalists, two young girls that I actually know them personally, and they've been in jail for 6 months. And they let them, like, finally they're free on very, very expensive bails. So that part that here's your bill, here's your receipt, and we're gonna like arrest this person, and we don't even give a damn that it's justified or not. Our job is something else. And we keep like that in the scene in the restaurant. They say, so don't you work in government, Sam? Can't you do something? And he says, no, sorry, it's my lunchtime. Or no, that's not my department. That's why I keep saying that we are living in dystopia, because I've seen this happening. And I'm sorry, maybe it wasn't not the good ending thing for this room, but this sinister thing. But yeah, this is it. That's why I like this dystopian movies, because they feel very true to me.
No worries, because actually the final word on Brazil goes to Vernon. So Vernon may be able to take us home on a slightly more hopeful note than than we're living in dystopia and all life is entropy. So yeah. So cheer us up, Vern.
Yeah, I think you're asking for too much. Since I admitted at the beginning, I identify with Sam Lowry. So, but I think, I'm going to have to carry the baton from Yassi. And I think that's like with this film, and actually, like watching it now. And I think it's been a few years since I've watched it, and I'm at an age now where I forget. I'm at that age where I've forgotten more than I remember, and so a lot of times, whenever I watch films, it's almost like even my favorite films, it's like watching it for the first time. And in watching this film, when I was in my 20s and in my teens, I was very, very idealistic. I feel like I'm in the latter volume of Don Quixote now, and I've gotten to a point where, in my job, I'm a director. I'm like a high level manager, and I oversee all these millennials and Gen Zers now, and it's really tough. And I feel like I've checked out in a lot of ways, like Sam Lowry has. Like, it's hard about things because there are so many things in like education reform. Like, I used to be a street activist and an advocate in legislation for affordable home ownership in New York City, and also public schools. And the last 3 administrations, no matter how much evidence there is for their practices being wrong, and doing harm, they double and triple down on these things. And it's like the energy and time that you invest, it just makes you want to quit and just check out. But I will say, because I also have teenagers, and so I try to stay hopeful for them. And I can see how me watching films like this and reading books like Don Quixote and trying to explain to the kids like why it's my favorite, I can see that I'm planting seeds in them for them to vicariously learn things from me, so that maybe they'll take it a different way. And I came in with a lot of traumatic handicaps that really stopped me from like really digging into things. But I also know a lot of people, because I work at a university in the city, who've done good and impacted things in a good way. And so, for me, I'm sorry I didn't get to rewatch the film really before the room started. But I think from like the Understanding Movie rooms, and then from the UK Cinema History rooms, like I really am starting to go back and rewatch films. Like, I got so kind of disgusted with reality that before Clubhouse came around, I really stopped watching movies for like 5 or 6 years. Like, I would kind of watch stuff, but not really watch it and not really think about it. And I think, from these rooms and from these conversations and from the insights that that I get from other people, you know, I'm really reevaluating the films that I love and cherish. And you know, I just wanted to express my appreciation to Eric and also Daniel, you know, with his room, and Sila. I'm still living with the trauma of of your
That's
Bergman.
just too much Yeah, that was just too much Bergman, man.
yeah,
Sorry,
too much
I
sorry,
loved
Bergman.
it.
sorry,
I loved it. Next time, just space it out. No, just space it out.
sorry,
We a month of Bergman. Would you
sorry,
know?
sorry.
No, but you know what?
His birthday is
It's,
coming up quite soon.
Yeah,
Relax.
what's a little clinical depression between friends, right?
yeah, and that's the
Love
thing. I,
Bergman, love
Yeah,
his
yeah.
movies. That's a lot at
yeah,
once.
I am really thankful and grateful for that because I really kind of needed that infusion. I needed like a jump start. And so, you know, I'm definitely going to go back and I'm going to rewatch Brazil with my kids this weekend. You know, and like have a real conversation, you know, because I think now I definitely want to read like 1984 with them before they graduate, and then also watch the film because I think that version with John Hurt is a good representation of the book, though there's some critical scenes missing. And so, you know, I just wanted to say how much I appreciate this room, and I'm definitely inspired to go back and rewatch both versions. I'm even going to watch all three versions. I think I have.
That's a very interesting point because we are deciding on a film for next week. Yazzie, do we actually have a film for next week, or is the 1984 something we could discuss as maybe being next week's film?
I think you're gonna let the same drama. The trauma of Bergman happened here again. If we watch 1984 next week, it's gonna the disappointment and the despair and the depression. We all gonna need therapy
That's
after
a
that.
very
I
good.
don't.
That's a very good.
Because July is
Oops,
July
but it's
14th.
something.
We'll still be in Bergman.
Sia,
We'll still
Sia,
be in Bergman land.
maybe wait a second. Maybe I don't have another suggestion for the sci-fi, but I have a request for Bergman, and it's Face to Face because you haven't talked about it, and that's my favorite Bergman movie.
Okay, I'll not make a note
Really?
of that.
Thank
Yes,
you.
of course,
we only have
of
till
course.
July to figure that one out. Well, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
and
end.
phantasmagoric because
Does
sometimes I say words that Eric likes. My
I
word for this movie is phantasmagoric.
I am so
And
hot right now.
does
Yeah,
Woody
just
Allen have any? Did Woody Allen have any films that he did that were funded by the UK?
yes, he did. Yes, he did. He did two of them, but we're not doing them in here. I am not gonna openly invite Q. I am not going to openly invite QAnon to come, especially on fucking Clubhouse. I am not gonna. It's the same reason we're not doing a Clockwork Orange. I'm not interested in
boo.
having a conversation with those fucking people about any of that because I'm not gonna change any of their minds. And no, I am no, we're not putting ourselves through that. And you know, and it's not. I'm not being selfish here. I'm not putting you people through that because they're terrible people. We don't want them here.
Bogus excuses, just like what they did to Terry
No,
Gilliam.
I have
Yes.
look. This is not a democracy. This is a dictatorship. I am not interested in having that conversation, Yazzie. I am not interested
Okay.
in.
Okay.
I am not interested in
I
defending.
yield.
I am not interested in defending any. I'm not interested in 70s visions of violent rape and our changing perspective. That's not, to me, a conversation worth having. It's not interesting to me. So, yeah, I'm putting my foot down. No Clockwork Orange, no Woody Allen. I'm going to
I
end
tried,
with.
Yassi. I tried.
I know. Thank you. I know. I see you, Vern. I see you.
And I respect you for it. Don't, Vern. No, don't get me wrong. I'm going to end instead of with my own reflections, but with the reflections of one of our Facebook listeners. Um, a woman by the name of Melissa, who had seen this film for the first time because of my putting it on Facebook as this week's, and wrote to me, I expected a Monty Python film. I didn't expect to be eye-raped for 3 fucking hours. To which I replied, stop being such a drama queen. The longest possible cut you could have seen of this film, I raped you for maybe 2 hours and 20 minutes. Also, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. All right, and on that note, we have to decide on a film for next week. Yassi, have you chosen anything, or can we kind of just talk about something that might bear some of the themes of the other films that we've talked about this month?
Seriously, we decided on Danny Boyle, didn't we? We said like what? Yeah. So my suggestion is going to be Danny Boyle.
Well, no, this was your month.
Sunshine.
This was your month
No,
to
no, no.
choose.
I
So if
just
that's your
put it
choice,
to
that's your
vote.
choice.
I put it to vote. Sunshine,
okay.
Danny Boyle.
I will put it to a vote if you're choosing to put it to a vote. This is Yassi's idea. I am not putting this to a vote because I want to point out this is not a democracy. This is, simply one. This is my co-host being indulgent. But thumbs up if Danny Boyle's 2004 Sunshine, starring what's his name, Oppenheimer, the guy who played Oppenheimer, sounds like a film you'd like to discuss next week.
And now that you brought up Oppenheimer, I must say, just look what this Terry Gilliam could do with the least of budgets. He created such a masterpiece. I know. You said we're not
when
going
I
to talk
said the
about
words, I
Nolan.
wanted to suck them back into my mouth because it reminded me of that horrible piece of shit room that we had on it, and which I now carry as a badge of honor because that's the lowest I have sunk since creating these rooms.
Disney had a series called Secret Invasion, and it turned out so bad because they filmed it in Ukraine, and then the war happened. And so the Ukrainian on that series, they were the villains. So they had to change the whole series and re-edit everything, and it turned out trash. Like this movie, we all see different versions of it been edited, and we all see how editing can change a movie. Does any of these versions, it is anything less than a visual feast to answer to the person that wrote to you, emailed you on Facebook or whatever.
Okay, so by a 3-2 vote, we've decided on because High voted yes, Yassi's voting yes, and I'm the decision maker. Danny Boyle's Sunshine will be our discussion next week, and it will round out our month of it, and it's our first legitimate non-dystopian sci-fi movie this month. Because Lola and War Games had a lot of dystopia in them. So, yes. All right. Programming note. Vern and Leonard, probably not me because I don't think Clubhouse will have fixed their glitch by then. We'll be discussing at 1 o'clock on Saturday the Marlon Brando Western One-Eyed Jacks. Great story behind that. It was originally supposed to be directed by Stanley Kubrick. And most people now believe that Marlon Brando, when he took over directing after he fired Stanley Kubrick, was actually using Stanley Kubrick's directorial notes. So there should be a lot to talk about, and which makes me even more pissed off that I probably won't be there. I'm gonna have to go on ahead and just say that tentatively, probably my Sunday 11 o'clock rooms that I started are going to be put off this week because I doubt very highly I'm going to be able to get in Clubhouse for them. All of that's going to be up in the air until that's taken care of. And then we'll start March with the Laurence Olivier in the 1960 Tony Richardson film, The Entertainer. Other than that, I hope to see you next week. I hope to God it's on Clubhouse. I do want to point out that instead of canceling the room, I went to a lot of trouble to try and set this up because and we don't do this for, we don't have a sponsor. We're not doing this for money. This is just a hobby. But because it was important to me to hear your reflections on this film, because it was fun for me. I don't consider it a job. Oh, but I didn't, I also want to thank you all for all the trouble that I put you all through just to be able to assemble this room. And it is the highlight of my week, being able to talk to all of you. But on that, I'm going to end this room. But actually, because of the technical glitch, Leonard is going to have to end this room. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you all next week for Danny Boyle's Sunshine.
No matter how much evidence there is for their practices being wrong, and doing harm, they double and triple down on these things. And it's like the energy and time that you invest, it just makes you want to quit and just check out. But I will say, because I also have teenagers, and so I try to stay hopeful for them. And I can see how me watching films like this and reading books like Don Quixote and trying to explain to the kids like why it's my favorite, I can see that I'm planting seeds in them for them to vicariously learn things from me, so that maybe they'll take it a different way. And I came in with a lot of traumatic handicaps that really stopped me from like really digging into things. But I also know a lot of people, because I work at a university in the city, who've done good and impacted things in a good way. And so, for me, I'm sorry I didn't get to rewatch the film really before the room started. But I think from like the Understanding Movie rooms and then from the UK Cinema History rooms, like I really am starting to go back and rewatch films. Like I got so kind of disgusted with reality that before Clubhouse came around, I really stopped watching movies for like 5 or 6 years. Like I would kind of watch stuff, but not really watch it and not really think about it. And I think, from these rooms and from these conversations and from the insights that I get from other people, I'm really reevaluating the films that I love and cherish. And I just wanted to express my appreciation to Eric and also Daniel, with his room, and Sila. I'm still living with the trauma of your
That's
Bergman.
just too much Yeah, that was just too much Bergman, man.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I,
too much
I
sorry,
loved
Bergman.
it.
sorry,
I loved it. Next time, just space it out. No, just space it out.
sorry,
We a month of Bergman. Would
sorry, sorry.
No, but you know what?
His birthday is
Just
coming up quite soon.
Yeah,
Relax.
what's a little clinical depression between friends, right?
yeah, and that's the
Love
thing.
Bergman, love
Yeah,
his
yeah.
movies. That's a lot at once.
Yeah, but I am really thankful and grateful for that, because I really kind of needed that infusion. I needed like a jump start. And so, I'm definitely going to go back and I'm going to rewatch Brazil with my kids this weekend. And like have a real conversation, because I think now I definitely want to read like 1984 with them before they graduate, and then also watch the film, because I think that version with John Hurt is a good representation of the book, though there's some critical scenes missing. And so, I just wanted to say how much I appreciate this room, and I'm definitely inspired to go back and rewatch both versions. I'm even going to watch all three versions, I think.
Sometimes I say words that Eric likes. My
I
word for this movie is phantasmagoric.
I am so
And
hot right now.
Does
Yeah,
Woody
Yeah.
Allen have any? Did Woody Allen have any films that he did that were funded by the UK?
yes, he did. Yes, he did. He did 2 of them, but we're not doing them in here. I am not going to openly invite Q. I am not going to openly invite QAnon to come, especially on fucking Clubhouse. I am not going to. It's the same reason we're not doing a Clockwork Orange. I'm not interested in
boo.
having a conversation with those fucking people about any of that because I'm not going to change any of their minds. And no, I am no, we're not putting ourselves through that. And I'm and it's not. I'm not being selfish here. I'm not putting you people through that because they're terrible people. We don't want them here.
Bogus bogus excuses, just like what they did to Terry
No,
Gilliam.
I have
Yes.
look. This is not a democracy. This is a dictatorship. I am not interested in having that conversation, Yassi. I am not interested
Okay.
in.
Okay.
I am not interested in
I
defending.
yield.
I am not interested in defending any. I'm not interested in 70s visions of violent rape and our changing perspective. That's not, to me, a conversation worth having. It's not interesting to me. So, yeah, I'm putting my foot down. No Clockwork Orange, no Woody Allen. I'm going to
I
end
tried,
with...
Yassi. I tried.
I know. Thank you. I know. I see you, Vern. I see you.
And I respect you for it. Don't, Vern. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to end instead of with my own reflections, but with the reflections of one of our Facebook listeners, a woman by the name of Melissa, who had seen this film for the first time because of my putting it on Facebook as this week's, and wrote to me. I expected a Monty Python film. I didn't expect to be eye-raped for 3 fucking hours. To which I replied, stop being such a drama queen. The longest possible cut you could have seen of this film, I raped you for maybe 2 hours and 20 minutes. Also, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. All right, and on that note, we have to decide on a film for next week. Yassi, have you chosen anything, or can we kind of just talk about something that might bear some of the themes of the other films that we've talked about this month?
We decided on Danny Boyle, didn't we? We said like what? Yeah. So my suggestion is going to be Danny Boyle.
Well, no, this was your month.
Sunshine.
This was your month
No,
to
no, no.
choose.
I
So if
just
that's your
put it
choice,
to
that's
vote.
your choice.
I put it to vote. Sunshine,
okay.
Danny Boyle.
I will put it to a vote if you're choosing to put it to a vote. This is Yazzy's idea. I am not putting this to a vote because I want to point out this is not a democracy. This is, simply one. This is my co-host being indulgent. But thumbs up if Danny Boyle's 2004 Sunshine, starring what's his name, Oppenheimer, the guy who played Oppenheimer, sounds like a film you'd like to discuss next week.
And now that you brought up Oppenheimer, I must say, just look what this guy, Terry Gilliam could do with the least of budgets. He created such a masterpiece. I know. You said we're not
when
going
I
to talk
said the
about
words, I
Nolan.
wanted to suck them back into my mouth because it reminded me of that horrible piece of shit room that we had on it, and which I now carry as a badge of honor because that's the lowest I have sunk since creating these rooms.
Disney had a series called Secret Invasion, and it turned out so bad because they filmed it in Ukraine, and then the war happened. And so the Ukrainian on that series, they were the villains. So they had to change the whole series and re-edit everything, and it turned out trash. Like this movie, we all see different versions of it been edited, and we all see how editing can change a movie. Does any of these versions, it is anything less than a visual feast to answer to the person that wrote to you, emailed you on Facebook or whatever. Okay, you
Okay,
might not
so
be happy with the
by a
ending.
3-2 vote, we've decided on because High voted yes, Yazzy's voting yes, and I'm the decision maker. Daddy Boyle's Sunshine will be our discussion next week, and it will round out our month of it, and it's our first legitimate non-dystopian sci-fi movie this month. Because Lola and War Games yeah, had a lot of dystopia in them. So, yes. All right. Programming note. Vern and Leonard, probably not me, because I don't think Clubhouse will have fixed their glitch by then. We'll be discussing at 1 o'clock on Saturday the Marlon Brando Western One-Eyed Jacks. Great story behind that. It was originally supposed to be directed by Stanley Kubrick, and most people now believe that Marlon Brando, when he took over directing after he fired Stanley Kubrick, was actually using Stanley Kubrick's directorial notes. So there should be a lot to talk about, and which makes me even more pissed off that I probably won't be there. I'm gonna have to go on ahead and just say that tentatively, probably my Sunday 11 o'clock rooms that I started are going to be put off this week, because I doubt very highly I'm going to be able to get in Clubhouse for them. All of that's going to be up in the air until that's taken care of. And then we'll start March with the Laurence Olivier and the 1960 Tony Richardson film, The Entertainer. Other than that, I hope to see you next week. I hope to God it's on Clubhouse. I do want to point out that instead of canceling the room, I went to a lot of trouble to try and set this up because and we don't do this for, we don't have a sponsor. We're not doing this for money. This is just a hobby. But because it was important to me to hear your reflections on this film, because it was fun for me. I don't consider it a job. Oh, but I didn't, I also want to thank you all for all the trouble that I put you all through just to be able to assemble this room. And it is the highlight of my week, being able to talk to all of you. But on that, I'm going to end this room. But actually, because of the technical glitch, Leonard is going to have to end this room. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you all next week for Danny Boyle's Sunshine.